So, despite the fact that he is selling out the United Center for Collision, which debuts this Saturday in his hometown of Chicago, with him being in the match that you see on the upper right, the six-man tag teaming with FTR against Samoa Joe and Bullet Club Gold's Jay White and Juice Robinson. It seems that outside of that, um, any other Collision ticket sales that you think would be going out the window because this is a new show and everything, and people want to be part at least of the first couple of episodes, you think those would be flying out the door. But apparently they're not. They are not flying out the door. As a matter of fact, ticket sales have been very dismal. I mean, yes, most of the ticket sales, after the Collision show in Chicago are going to be Canadian based and Northeast U.S. based. There's no denying that kind of might be playing a role in everything. But is it really that? Or is it the fact that maybe, and this is just me, this is just my opinion, and I'm not sure if anybody else shares the same opinion, maybe it's because of the fact that they don't know if they can trust Punk. I mean, in Chicago, obviously they can. They believe they can trust Punk. Like, yeah, he is worth trusting and giving multiple chances to. There's no denying that. I mean, that's true for any hometown hero, whether it's in wrestling, MMA, boxing, NFL, MLB, NHL, NBA, you name it. The same could be said, for all of them, for all those kind of athletes, as well. But but outside of that, the same can't be said, in other markets. When you look at basically, what's the one? What so I got distracted there. My mom's phone alarm went off. But what was I saying? Oh, yeah. When you look at, let's say you're Brock Purdy for the 49ers, and he and Trey Lance are looked at as the future QB wise for the 49ers. And you look at them and you see the reaction they get at home, right? In Santa Clara, San Francisco, and maybe even when they go to, let's say, Las Vegas or San Diego or Los Angeles. They'll get a decent reaction. But, because fans will follow. Decent amount of fans will follow. But when you take them outside of, the West Coast market, if you will, and you take them into the Midwest or the East, you'll have fans that'll follow, but not as much. You take them, you put them into the environment of Philadelphia, like we saw last year, and they'll get booed right out of the building. Fans will cheer when they get hurt. So, looking at the situation with Punk, it's understandable that fans in Chicago or in his hometown or in the Chicago region, the Illinois state period, would be behind him and would support him and say, yes, he is willing to be, we are willing to trust him. We are willing to give him multiple chances. But outside of that, entirely different story. Not just because it's Canada, and a lot of people consider Canada, when it comes to wrestling or MMA or even boxing, bizarro world, but mostly it's the fact that you also look at the status of ticket sales in the Northeast, which is, pretty much cemented as, with Long Island, most specifically MJF territory. So you look at that and you say to yourself, okay, we understand why the tickets configuring, if you will, seating configurized are selling out the United Center for the Saturday. But then you look at, like I said, the future collisions, and you're like, well, I can understand maybe why. It's not in Chicago. It's not in his backyard. And these are entirely different environments. You're going into bizarro world for at least a month. of Collision and Dynamite tapings and, Rampage tapings and Ring of Honor. You're going there for at least a month. And then you're coming back and you're coming back on the East Coast and in places like Long Island and Greensboro, who are more territorial towards people like MJF and maybe even the BCC, but not so to CM Punk. And it's, again, I think it's mainly because of the fact that outside of Illinois, the state of Illinois, outside of Chicago, CM Punk's trust is not, is not easily earned. And not his trust, but basically the trust that Chicago and the state of Illinois puts into CM Punk, and all that, are not, how do I put this, are not as, easily earned outside of Chicago. And I just saw something on my OBS studio, said encoding overloaded or something. I don't know. Kind of got me distracted there. And it's early. It's about 8:04 in the morning. I do apologize. Trying to do this before my mom really gets up. But anyway, like I said, outside of Chicago and the state of Illinois, trust to be put back into Punk is not so easily earned, because there are fans in these areas, in Canada, in the Northeast, if not throughout the rest of the United States, that they look at Punk and they're like, yeah, it's great to have him back, but how do we know we can trust him? How do we know he's not going to pull the same BS that he did before? NDA, NDSs or NDAs, be damned. How do we know he's not going to pull the same crap, that he did before? And that's a good question. That is indeed a good question. And people have the right to feel that way. Passionate fans, wrestling fans overall, hardcore, casual, lovers of both WWE and AEW and New Japan and Impact and all that, MLW, they have a right to wonder that. They have a right to ask that and everything of, okay, Chicago, okay, state of Illinois, we get that, you believe Punk can be trusted. We get that. We're cool with that. But we're not you. So we still have to have enough proof. We still need to have the proof in the pudding, if you will, that he has changed, that he will not pull another stunt like this. Because everybody looks at what he did last year, almost a year ago now, as almost potentially being the first death nail into AEW's coffin. And that's a death nail that, a lot of people feel didn't need to be inserted, if you will. They didn't need to be inserted. It didn't need to be inserted whatsoever. And it could have been avoided. But ever since then, things have not been the same for AEW. When you really get down to it, I mean, yes, they are finding their stride again. Yes, they're getting the momentum again. Around the right time that it's needed. I'm not denying that. Nobody's denying that. But outside of that, they look at the fact that what happened, in the media scrum, the brawl out and everything, as being a very, very ominous black eye for AEW. In that it's something that AEW has to live with now. And it's going to take a lot longer than just, hey, we're bringing Punk back. We're going to put him on Collision. He's not going to have any involvement with Dynamite or the Elite or anything like that. It's going to take more than that. You see, the fans that feel, okay, Chicago, we get it. Okay, Illinois, we get it. It's your hometown boy. It's your statehood. It's your state here. Your statehood boy, or statehood boy. Yeah, we get that. We get that. Obviously, you're going to be more biased than the rest of us. But again, as I mentioned earlier, they're going to say, hey, we get he's good for business. We understand why, Illinois, the state of Illinois and most of Chicago would, give him another chance out of the multitude he's had. But outside of that, they're like, again, as I mentioned, they're like, give us proof. Give us proof he's changed. And the biggest proof that they really want is for him to come face to face with the Elite. They want him to be in the ring with Kenny Omega, with the Bucks, with Hangman Page. Look him in the eye and say, hey guys, I apologize. I screwed up. I shouldn't have done that. I let my emotions get the best of me. And I'm giving you my word in front of the world right now that will never occur again, because I'm willing to work, I'm willing to, do business with you and work with you. And if it means putting you guys over because, hey, this is your company, so be it. That's what fans want. That's the one thing, the one piece of evidence, visual evidence fans want to truly feel like, okay, Punk, you are deserving of another chance because you swallowed your pride in front of the world, apologized, and even acknowledged that, hey, this is their company, and and that means basically you'll probably have to put them over whether you want to or not. That's the kind of proof they want. That's the kind of evidence they want to basically, kind of slowly shed away any doubt. The other thing that the fans outside of Illinois, and outside of Chicago want to kind of fully embrace what Chicago will normally do, what Illinois will normally do, outside of what I just mentioned, is they don't want this whole Collision and Dynamite thing to be a soft reset, for the roster. They don't want it to be a soft reset, or reboot or whatever you call it, for the roster. What they want is for Collision and Dynamite and Rampage to be shows for everybody, where you can see everyone. Not just, Collision's the CM Punk show and Dynamite's the Elite show. They don't want that. They don't want that. They want it to be a show where they can see the Elite alongside Punk. They can see, they can see the Elite alongside Punk. They can see FTR alongside the Elite, and so on. That's what they want. They don't want shows to where, yeah, you might see some of the same faces that you see on Dynamite, on Collision, and vice versa, and even coming together for Rampage. But, they don't want to have to, notice that, but then, notice and see that, but also realize that even though there's some familiarity, it's still different. It's still a show that kind of has its own distinct identity and roster. They don't want that. They want it to be a show where everybody is involved. And the way that happens is for CM Punk, in their eyes, to come out and, as I mentioned earlier, confront the Elite, apologize for what happened, swallow his pride, and basically come out and understand that, hey, this is your company, and I'm only here to help make this company better, and if it means putting you guys over, so be it. And that's it. That's it. That's all they want. And in that way, in their minds, the fans outside of Chicago and everything, we won't have to worry about a soft reset and everything. When it comes to the roster, it'll be all good. Everything will be pretty much put aside when you get down to it. The other thing, though, that obviously, to me, Tony Khan, who also needs to take some of the blame, and I think that's the other reason why some fans outside of Chicago are not willing to give Punk a second chance. It's mainly because the guy that's bringing him back, Tony Khan, has not yet come out and taken responsibility for allowing that situation in the media scrum after All Out last year to occur. He's not coming out and taking responsibility. If he comes out along with Punk in their eyes and apologizes for not stepping in like a real boss and basically cutting Punk's mic off, or basically telling him, hey, cool it, enough, cool it, and everything, and just trying to avoid the situation, to me, in my honest opinion, if the only way, like I said, fans are going to be willing to accept Punk, just as Chicago does, willing to give him a second chance, is if, along with Punk making an apology, Tony Khan does the same thing. He does the same thing and says, look, I made a mistake. I wasn't acting like a leader. I was acting more as a fan and everything. So I apologize. I should have taken responsibility. And from here on in, I'm not going to let that kind of stuff ever, plague AEW again. That's all he has to do. He has to apologize, make a promise in front of the world that he's not going to let that happen again, and all that, and even apologize and say, look, I should have stepped in. I didn't. That was on me. And once he does that, fans, like I mentioned earlier, with Punk coming out and apologize, would be more willing to give Punk, an opportunity, outside of Chicago. I mean, outside of what Chicago normally does, and everything. They'll be willing to give Punk more of an opportunity than I think anybody imagines they're not going to right now. They'd be willing to say, okay, Chicago, your boy, he apologized. The man who's bringing him back apologized. Okay, we're willing to give him a second chance. Because at least they'll get what they want. They'll get an apology out of him. They'll get an acknowledgement, from him that, hey, this is AEW, this is the Elite's company, and he needs to put them over. He needs to put them over if need be. So yeah, I think once those kind of things are done, outside of the Chicago region, I could see fans in Canada. I could see fans in the Northeast portion of the U.S. and even throughout the rest of the U.S., outside of Illinois, outside of Chicago, willing to give Punk a second chance, willing to, basically accept his apology and embrace him once again, like Chicago mainly does 24/7 sometimes. So yeah, I could see that happening, and that's why. But speaking of Tony Khan, this is why if you look at the bottom here, this is why I think he's putting this match or trying to work on putting this match together for Forbidden Door, and that's why he's putting Punk into the 6-man in the debut episode of Collision, because he wants to maybe set up for the battle, of the GTSs, a match that we as fans have been wanting for over a decade. Even when WWE had both Punk and Kenta under their belt, Kenta as Hideo Itami, we've been wanting this match, and now it looks like the debut episode of Collision is going to probably build upon that. Like I could see Kenta coming in and helping Bullet Club Gold helping Joe and Bullet Club Gold win their match. Because everybody's talking about, is BCG going to get a new member, and it looks like that new member is going to be Kenta. It is. So it would make, so storyline wise, for BCG, it would make sense. You're adding in a third member, and it will basically build and play into the matchup between him and Punk being made official for Forbidden Door. I can see that. So yeah, obviously Tony Khan wants to make this happen, and I think he's going to use use the debut episode of Collision, the main event for the debut episode of Collision, to make that a reality. But why is he wanting to do this? Why is he wanting to add this match along with the other two matches we already got? That being, Danielson and Okada and Omega and Ospreay. Why is he wanting to add that match? Is he wanting to make Forbidden Door a pay-per-view, that everyone throughout sports entertainment and pro wrestling is going to be talking about, more so than, let's say, Money in the Bank, which happens basically, a week later? Or I think a week later, right? Yeah, a week later. Is he, is that why he's, is that why he's doing it? So that people will talk about it more so than Money in the Bank, which, let me see when Money in the Bank takes place. Hold on, guys. Let me see. It takes place on July 1st. It actually happens that week. That's Saturday. So is he doing this mainly to make sure that even when Money in the Bank takes place on that Saturday, that people are talking still more about Forbidden Door over what happens at Money in the Bank? Is he doing that, from a competitive standpoint? Maybe. But is he also doing that because he believes that if he puts Punk into this kind of a matchup, and the Canadian audience at that sold-out Scotiabank Center sees what he can do, that might, enhance future ticket sales for the Collision that happens afterwards. For the Collision that takes place, later on that week, because I know there's a Collision on the 24th and everything. So is he trying to up the ticket sales, for the Collision that takes place in another part? I can't think what part of Canada they go. I think it's Hamilton they go into next after Toronto. So, I'm wondering if he's doing this to up ticket sales for that. So that fans can see what Punk is capable of, and maybe that's what wins them over. I don't know, but we'll see. We'll see if he'll be able to get this done, because again, it does kind of line up with the idea that, okay, you want to make that debut episode of Collision, memorable. You want people talking about it. What better way for it, to get talked about than to have BCG, Bullet Club Gold, add in Kenta as a new member and help them win the main event over Chicago's own CM Punk, and then you set the door for you open the door for CM Punk and Kenta. I mean, it makes sense in my opinion. It makes sense, honestly. But we'll have to see. We will have to see, what they have planned, this Saturday and everything, because again, I can understand him doing this in addition to the other two matches we have and what other matches we're going to get, as as a means of saying, hey, basically as a means of basically saying, hey, I'm putting on this show, and I know WWE's got Money in the Bank in London on Saturday, but I'm putting on this show so that this way, with this card and these matches, I mean, basically, if he gets Punk and Kenta, as much as I may hate to say this about the AEW Championship and everything, or the IWGP Championship, you are looking at 3 banger main events back to back to back. And everybody knows it. And Tony Khan knows it. So you have to wonder, again, if he's doing this, not only to show the people of Canada, especially those, I think, in Hamilton, Ontario, where they're going next after Toronto, that, hey, CM Punk is worth watching. He is worth bringing back. He is worth your money to buy a ticket to see. You have to wonder if it's not just that, but he's also doing this to get people to talk about Forbidden Door more so than Money in the Bank, especially, when you have the Go Home edition of Raw the next night, and the Go Home edition of SmackDown that following Friday. You have to wonder if he's doing this to get people to talk more about Forbidden Door than Money in the Bank. That's overshadow WWE to say, okay, I brought my A+ game, my S+ game, if you will. Now, the ball's in your court to do the same. You have to wonder. You have to wonder from a competitive standpoint if he's trying to get this match added that you see at the bottom to basically be, essentially a third main event that, along with whatever else gets added, basically shows that they're bringing the S tier for Forbidden Door, and then at the same time, from a competitive standpoint, throwing out that challenge to WWE, saying, look, we brought our S game, now it's up to you. Ball's in your court. Can you outdo us, or are we going to win the overall week and win the overall month? See, that to me also is why Tony Khan's trying to get Kenta and Punk added to Forbidden Door. Not only to try to win the Canadian crowd over, in support of CM Punk, to kind of give him a second chance, but also because he wants to competitively, try to stick it to, as well as competitively challenge WWE to bring their S tier game, that following Saturday with Money in the Bank. So you have to really wonder about that. But, outside of the competitiveness, though, I think it's, like I said, I think it's also because he wants fans in Canada to kind of embrace Punk, to kind of see what he's capable of doing, and if they could, and if he's going to be put into a match like this, which even the fans in Toronto will be like, oh yeah, that's a match we've been wanting to see too. If they can see him willing to be part of a match like that, and even maybe put over Kenta to show that, hey, I've changed, I'm not the Punk I was anymore, and everything. And Kenta's the true master of the GTS. If he, agrees to the match, which, again, Tony Khan, I'm sure, is hoping will happen, especially if it, gets built upon the debut of Collision, and the trios match, you know, you have to, you have to wonder if maybe, Tony Khan in his mind is, hey, I bring Punk back, he agrees to this match, and if he agrees to this match and he puts Kenta over, maybe that might win the folks of Canada and the remaining Canadian cities we're going to with Collision. Maybe that might win them over and might drive ticket sales for them to be like, okay, Punk did the right thing. Maybe he has changed. We'll give him a second chance. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see what occurs and everything. But honestly, right now, honestly, overall, outside of Chicago, it's becoming a hot sale, and obviously you could tell, by by the Forbidden Door match that's being rumored and proposed and everything. You could tell you could tell that Tony Khan wants to, he wants the AEW audience, he wants the wrestling audience to embrace Punk once again, to give him that second chance that Tony's giving him, that parts of AEW, parts of the AEW roster, I should say, are giving him and such. He wants them to give him that second chance. He wants the other wrestling, fan base community, outside of Chicago, outside of parts of the AEW roster and himself, to give CM Punk that chance. And you have to wonder if part of that way to make it happen is by putting this Forbidden Door match together for Forbidden Door between Punk and Kenta. That way the people in a sold-out Scott's Bank Center in Toronto can see exactly, hey, Punk, Punk is, that Punk, excuse me, almost got tongue-tied there, that Punk still has it, he could still go, if not better than ever, but now he's basically changed, that he has indeed changed, and he's willing to do the right thing by putting people like, Kenta over, and even acknowledging him as the OG of the GTS, so maybe that's what he's hoping, that, if this all, comes and all gets pieced together, that, Punk will put that, and that basically by having Punk maybe agree to put Kenta over, and also showcasing that, hey, he still can go in the ring, if not better than ever, that will win the future Canadian audiences, I should say, for Collision, where they're going, in the places they're going to be Hamilton, Calgary, whatever that other place was, they're going to, and then of course Greensboro, Long Island. You got to think if maybe he's doing this just to try to win them all over, to say, hey, Punk's back, he can go, if not better than ever, and oh, by the way, he's now going to do the right thing and put over talent that needs to be put over, and not making it about himself. You have to wonder if maybe that's what Tony Khan is hoping for, because I know people are going to say, well, Tony Khan was the one that pushed him to be world champion, and Punk didn't want it at first until Tony Khan convinced him, marketing wise and publicity wise, it'd be good for the good for the company. Yeah, that is indeed true. Punk obviously didn't want to be champion until Tony Khan explained the reasoning and all that. So maybe Tony Khan's learned his lesson. Maybe he's realizing, okay, maybe I should have just listened to Punk and not put him in the World Championship title picture, and just let him be the CM Punk that wants to help the future of the business, wants to help put over talent and stuff, and go from there. And have certain dream matches and everything that even he's been wanting. Let him work with certain people. But we'll have to see. But yeah, right now, outside of the United Center this Saturday, CM Punk, being part of Collision, outside of that, ticket sale wise, is not really It's not really helping, at all. And I know people might say, well, it's not just all Punk. I think it's it's also the fact that people know that Collision's going to get taped and everything. And yeah, that is true because of the time slot it's in. I'm not denying that. And that might even contribute to it. But outside of it being taped, it's, it basically, when you really get down to it, it's mainly that distrust that fans outside of Chicago in the state of Illinois have for Punk, and they're not sure whether or not they can trust him. and that if he doesn't do something like I mentioned earlier, where he comes out on Collision, calls out the Elite, looks him in the eye, face to face in the ring, apologizes for what he did, at the media scrum in the brawl out, and basically acknowledges that, hey, this company, it's your company, it's not mine, and I understand now that I'm here to help put over guys like you, if needed. If he does something like that, that might be the first step to fans acknowledging the fact that just like the people in Chicago, that okay, Punk has changed. He is someone willing to be given a second chance. And then in addition to that, maybe Tony Khan comes out and apologizes along with him, or around the same time, and says, look, I apologize for not being the leader I should have been and stepping in when I should have, and from here on in, I'm gonna be more of a leader than a fan, and and make sure that that kind of stuff that happened, in the media scrum last year at All Out doesn't happen again. So obviously, if things like those, if scenarios like that happen, that might be the first couple of steps to fans outside of Chicago willing to give Punk a second chance. And more importantly, if Tony Khan can get the Forbidden Door match with Kenta made official, especially if he works it off of what happens in the trios main event, on Collision, if Tony Khan can get that match to happen and allow the rest of Canada to see that, hey, Punk is good to go, if not better than before, but also at the same time convince Punk to put over Kenta, as a sign of saying, hey, see, Punk's willing to do the right thing now and put over talent that is not him, and not the other way around. Maybe that might be a way for in Tony Khan's mind, for the public to acknowledge, just like the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois, that okay, Punk is worth giving a second chance to. But we'll have to just sit back and see what happens and everything. We really will. But anyway, though, guys, I just wanted to come out here, give my thoughts on that, as to why I think ticket sales outside of Chicago for Collision, are not, doing so well, because not just the Punk, but other means as well, and as well as give my thoughts as to how I see Tony Khan trying to rectify all that in the process, as well as give my thoughts as to, as to why he wants to put the match, with Kenta, together for Forbidden Door, not just only to, like I say, hopefully rectify, the trust between, fans outside of Chicago and Punk, but also as a competitive way of trying to tell WWE, hey, I'm bringing my S tier game. Now the ball's in your court to do the same. And on Saturday, you have to wonder if all that together is has a meaning to it as well. And I just wanted to give my thoughts on that, and also just give my thoughts on what I think and believe fans want, outside of Chicago, to be fully to be fully, I guess you could say, immersed into trying to give CM Punk, or at least willing to give CM Punk a second chance, like Chicago and the state of Illinois and some other parts of the U.S. are trying to do as well. But I just wanted to, like I said, give my overall thoughts on it, and I do apologize if I'm rambling a bit or slurring a little bit. It's early. Like I said, I'm trying to do this before my mom officially gets up early. Well, before my mom officially gets up and everything, I should say. But I just wanted to give you my thoughts and all that. Let me know how you feel about this. Comment below. Live chat during the premiere. Super chats are open, or were open, I should say, during the live chat. I will bring that up in the description. You will see that, or maybe you'll see that in the title. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Comment below. Live chat during the premiere. Use the super use the super thanks button to help contribute. Also, you'll get an audio podcast version of this at my BW Roses Discussions podcast, which you can listen to in all your favorite podcast outlets. More specifically, I would suggest strongly to check me out on Spotify. But guys, and also check out my Teespring store as well by clicking the shop button in the bottom right hand corner of the screen when it pops up, or the little shopping bag icon in the display when you pull up the information and everything for the video. But guys, let me know what your thoughts are, though. Overall, love to hear each and every one of you on how you feel about this, what you think the real reason is, what you think fans want, and what do you think Tony Khan's reasoning for all this is truly. And until then, I will talk to you all later.